Rawiri Waratini Kara, and this is historical intergenerational trauma. In the previous series, we discussed how trauma moves from one generation to the next, and it moves from one generation to the next through cellular memories, passed from parent to child, passed from grandparent to grandchild. In this series, we're going to look at how cellular memories passes from organ donors to organ recipients.
Andrea was 16 when she passed, and I got both of her lungs, and we look a lot alike. We had blonde hair, long and blue eyes.
But the similarities shared between Tanya Kimmy and her organ donor Andrea were more than skin deep. Since her transplant surgery, Kimmy says she's felt Andrea's presence.
When I talked to her mom on the phone, she said that she had a hard time getting Andrea out of the bathtub because she loved to soak, and that's what I do now.
Celia Fabre, who received a kidney and liver last year, has not yet met her donor, although she has written to her donor's family requesting an in-person meeting.
It's hard to explain, but I feel their energy. I wasn't much of a chocolate person, but now I am. I love chocolate, and it's like, well, that's strange.
It's actually not all that strange. It's called cellular memory theory, and while it hasn't been scientifically proven, it is supported by patient testimonials. It's the belief that memories are stored in the neurons of our organs. If those organs are transplanted, the cellular memories go with them. Those who counter the theory say the connection is in the recipient's head or caused by prescription drugs or stress.
No, it's not in my head. I know she's with me.
And it's that theory that has helped Kimmy survive 20 years after her transplant.
In the last video sequence, we saw how cellular memories moves from organ donor to organ recipient. Now we're going to look at a few more examples.
Case number 1. The donor was a 17-year-old black male student who was a victim of a drive-by shooting. The recipient was a 47-year-old white male foundry worker diagnosed with narrowing of the heart valves. The donor was walking to his violin class when he was hit. Nobody knows where the bullet came from, but he died almost instantly on the street, hugging his violin case. He loved playing classical music, and his teacher said he was a natural talent with a violin. Even if other kids always made fun of the music he liked, he wasn't the typical black kid into rap and hip-hop. The recipient said that whilst he was sad that someone had died to give him a new heart, he had trouble with the fact that the donor was black. He said he wasn't a racist and that most of his work friends were black, but it didn't feel right that a white man had a black man's heart in his chest. Before the operation, he said he hated classical music, but since the transplant, he now loves it, and it made him feel calm. But he said it couldn't be anything to do with the heart, because a black guy from a hood wouldn't be into that sort of music. His wife also said that after the transplant, he invited his black co-workers over to his house for the first time, and now he doesn't see their colour anymore. She also said one more thing. He's driving me nuts with the classical music. He doesn't know any of the names of the pieces, and he never ever listened to it before. But now he sits and listens to it for hours. He even whistles classical music pieces that he could never know. How does he know them? You'd think that he'd like rap music or something because he's got a black guy's heart in his chest. Case number 2. Here the donor was an 18-year-old boy killed in a car accident. The recipient was an 18-year-old girl diagnosed with a rare and potentially fatal type of heart infection, which was believed to have been contracted after a dentist visit. The donor loved to write poetry and music. After he died, his parents waited over a year before cleaning out his room. It was then they found a book of poems that he'd never shown them. In one of the poems, he spoke of seeing his own death, and he wrote a song titled "Danny, My Heart Is Yours," in which he felt that he was going to die and leave his heart to someone. Being strong-willed, he decided to donate his organs when he was just 12 years old. His parents thought they must have been talking about it at school, so they were not too alarmed at the time. When the donor's parents met the recipient, they showed her the pictures of her son. The girl said she knew him directly. She could pick him out anywhere. She could also finish the phrases of his songs he wrote, and also her name was Danny, the same as in the title of the song he wrote. Before she was ill, the donor said that she couldn't play a musical instrument and had no interest in music. She was also a wild child and a bit of a hellraiser according to her mother. Although after the transplant, she became much calmer. Even though she said she felt she had more energy than before, she began to love music and also took up the guitar and singing, just like the donor of her new heart. Case number 3. The donor here was a 14-year-old girl who died in a gymnastics accident. The recipient was a 47-year-old man diagnosed with benign heart tumour and chronic heart disease. The donor's mother said that her daughter had been a picture of health. There wasn't an ounce of fat on her. She was so excited about life that she would just hop and jump around like a little kitten. She did have some trouble with food though. She would skip meals, and for a while she was eating, she would then go and throw it up. Her mother also said that she had this silly little giggle when she got embarrassed. The recipient of the new heart said he felt new again. He felt like a teenager. He felt giddy with the energy of the new heart, not only physically but also mentally. He felt just really young at heart. He also said that he'd developed an annoying tendency to giggle a lot, which drove his wife mad. There was also something about food. He didn't know why, but he said that when he got hungry he would then eat, but then often feel nauseated and felt like he wanted to throw it up, something which he'd never wanted to do before. The recipient's brother said he acts like a teenager. He's like a kid, even when we're bowling. He yells and jumps around like a fool. He's also got this weird laugh now. It's a girl's laugh, and when we tell him about it, he just doesn't care. His appetite also hasn't returned to what it was before the surgery. He feels nauseated all the time, and after a Thanksgiving dinner which he really loved, he then went upstairs and vomited it up. He went back to the hospital, but they say that it wasn't anything to do with his new heart. Or was it? Case number 4. Here, the donor was a 34-year-old police officer who was shot attempting to arrest a drug dealer. The recipient was a 56-year-old college professor who was diagnosed with chronic heart disease. After the transplant, the wife of the donor met the recipient and they discussed how he was recovering. He offhandedly said that the only real side effect of the surgery were the flashes of light in his face. This was something that got her attention because her husband had been shot in the face at close range. The last thing that he would have seen was the flash of the gunfire. They never caught the shooter, but they did have an idea of who he was, and she had seen an artist's impression of him. The suspect had long hair, deep eyes, a beard, and a really calm look about him, the sort of look you see in some of the pictures of Jesus. The recipient then said that there was only one thing he knew about the donor, and that he was a very healthy 34-year-old. But then he said, "There is something else, but I haven't told any of my doctors. I've only told my wife." He said a few weeks after he got his heart, he began to have dreams. He would see a flash of light right in his face, and then his face would get really, really hot. It felt like it was burning. Just before that happened, he would often get a glimpse of Jesus. He said he continued to have these dreams and now has daydreams about the same thing over and over again. Jesus, then a flash of white light. He said he'd spoken to the doctors about seeing the white light, but he hadn't said anything about seeing Jesus. Case number 5. The donor was a 19-year-old woman killed in an automobile accident, and the recipient was a 29-year-old lesbian woman diagnosed with chronic heart disease. The donor's mother said that her daughter had been the most loving girl. She owned and operated her own health food restaurant and was always getting onto her about not being a vegetarian. She was a great kid, wild but great. She was into free loving, and she had a different man in her life every couple of months. While she was in hospital and just before she died, she wrote some notes to her mother. She was so out of it, but she kept saying that she could feel the impact of the car hitting her. She said she could feel the car going through her body. The recipient said that since the transplant, a couple of things had happened to her. Almost every night, she said she could feel the impact of the accident the donor had hitting her chest, even though the doctors could find nothing wrong. Secondly, she now hates meat. She used to be McDonald's biggest moneymaker, and now she said it makes her want to throw up. There was also something more, and that she was now engaged to be married even though she was gay before. She is now not attracted to women anymore, and added that she has absolutely no desire to be with a woman now. She says, "I think I've had a gender transplant as well as a heart transplant."
Epigenetic research has highlighted how trauma moves from one generation to the next through cellular memories. We've seen some examples where people have picked up traits, personalities, characteristics, and even talents that have been passed from organ donors to organ recipients. So what is highlighted is a whole new world in epigenetic research that is still being developed, that is still being investigated.